Welcome everybody to tonight's launch of the Creative Pathways program. We're really happy that you could join us tonight for this, not only a sort of celebration of the launch, but also we hope that you find it quite informative about what a wonderful program we have. Before I introduce the participating lecturers who will talk about the students that they have brought into the program, I would like to hand over to the Ambassador of Ireland to Germany, Dr. Nicholas O'Brien, to say a few words. Ambassador.
Great. Thanks, Candice, and good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to welcome you this evening. I think we can say it's a great opportunity, and it's a great it's an exciting kind of time in terms of this Creative Pathways program. It's a brand new initiative by the Embassy, something new that we're trying. And with this initiative, we aim to open new channels of collaboration and cooperation between Irish and German academic arts institutions and their students. The aim of the program is to plant seeds of creativity and prosperity as well, hopefully, in both countries. In addition to offering new opportunities for cross-cultural exchange, the program establishes new practical networks, and this will further deepen the relationship between Ireland and Germany. As I always say, the relationship is always about people to people, and that's something we're very keen to build on. We hope that by participating in this program, not only will young artists gain valuable experience of working remotely with international collaborators, a skill which of course is highly valued in today's world, but that their artworks will be an expression of the collaboration between cultures and both countries. And these works will be publicly exhibited at the Raumwelten festival in Ludwigsburg in November. And we're particularly grateful to the academics for their active and enthusiastic engagement with the program, with Jürgen Simpson from the University of Limerick, Bernadette Cronin from University College Cork, Gerard Byrne from the Städelschule in Frankfurt, Jennifer Walsh for the Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst Stuttgart, and Ulrich Wegenast from the Filmuniversität Babelsberg, Conrad Wolfe. These highly esteemed educators and practitioners have played a vital role in guiding the program, selecting the exceptionally talented students and recent alumni, and will continue to mentor the teams up until the exhibition. The students and recent alumni got to know each other and the lecturers last week in an introductory meeting hosted by the Embassy, where they gave presentations on their varied and complementary practices. Needless to say, the diverse range of skills and talents highly impressive, and the Embassy is very proud to be able to work with you through this project. We're also keen to see the interpretations of the theme of I suppose, Beckettesque, within which the teams will work. And Samuel Beckett himself continues to inspire new generations of artists, and he himself represents bonds between Ireland and Germany, particularly in the region of Stuttgart, where he spent some time working on pieces for the Süddeutsche Rundfunk, not far from where the exhibition in Ludwigsburg will be held. So we gratefully look forward to the program and to seeing the collaborative art pieces that will be produced as part of the Creative Pathways program, and hope that the networks formed will present many more opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'll just quickly introduce the lecturers. Unfortunately, Gerard couldn't make it tonight to the event, but I'll just say a few words about Gerard and a few words about his students that he has brought to the event or to the program. Gerard Byrne is a lecturer at Städelschule in Frankfurt. He has exhibited at Skulpturprojekte Münster, Documenta 13, the 54th Venice Biennale, and biennales in Sydney, Guangzhou, Lyon, Istanbul, and recently at Busan. His solo exhibitions include Secession Vienna, ACA Melbourne, Kunstmuseum St. Gallen, Frac Pays de la Loire, Whitechapel Gallery, Renaissance Society, Chicago, and IMA. In 2007, he presented Ireland at the 52nd Venice Biennale, and in 2006, he received the Paul Hamlin Award. He is represented internationally by Lisson Gallery and by Curlin Gallery in Dublin and Nordenhaka Gallery in Stockholm. He previously held a professorship at the Art Academies of Copenhagen, and before he began teaching at Städelschule in Frankfurt, before that, he was recently elected to AS Dona. The two students that Gerard has inducted into the program are Juliet Carpenter, who is a multimedia practitioner from New Zealand. Before studying in Städelschule, she did a Bachelor of Arts in Elam School of Fine Arts at the University of Auckland. The other student that Gerard has brought in is here tonight, Francois Pisapia, who is also a media artist, and he is from Montreal and lives and works in Berlin. Thank you for coming tonight as well, Francois. So now we'll go over to Cork. Bernadette Cronin is a lecturer at the Department of Theatre at University College Cork, where she teaches adaptation, theatre practice, voice, texts, and contexts. She completed a PhD at the University of Exeter on theatrical representations of post-memories of the Holocaust, and her research focuses mainly on adapting, devising, and collaborative practice. She is also an actor, a theatre practitioner and researcher, and co-founder of Gatecrash Theatre Company, a collective that makes experimental performance work at the intersection between art forms. So Bernadette, if you'd like to say a few words, welcome and thank you for participating in the program. And thank you for coming tonight.
And thank you very much for the invitation, Candice. And I'm really happy to be representing the Department of Theatre and UCC here this evening, and even happier to introduce three of our wonderful graduates. I'm so happy when Johnny and Roshin and Sinead all were in a position to take up this opportunity. I'll introduce Johnny first because he's here on the call. Jonathan Lindgren graduated in 2018 with a BA in Drama and Theatre Studies from our department in UCC. Johnny's artistic practice focuses on playwriting, acting, and performance art. He also performs spoken word poetry, contemporary dance, musical composition, and lighting design. Just to say a word about his final year project, together with his collaborators, Johnny adapted the short story Kew Gardens by Virginia Woolf to create a beautifully atmospheric choreography of dance, play with object, and text. And to move on to Sinead Dunn. Sinead graduated with a BA International in Drama and Theatre Studies with Mathematical Science Studies in 2019. She spent her year abroad at the University of Montana, where her study focused on dance and physical practice. Sinead is a physical performer, a writer, and a designer. And themes that she likes to explore in her practice include the union of art and nature, creativity as a means to make sport a more feminist space, the body speaking as loudly as the voice, and comedy as a tool to discuss challenging material with a broad-based audience. For her final year performance project, together with her collaborators, Sinead adapted Christina Rossetti's poem Goblin Market to create a beautifully evocative piece of dance theatre. And finally, Roshin McCullum graduated with a BA International in Drama and Theatre Studies in 2018, and also with a Master of Science in Psychology from the University of Stirling in 2020. Roshin teaches drama to young people and is a youth theatre workshop facilitator. In her own artistic practice, she's interested in using theatre as a platform for activism and as a response to violence. And for her final year performance project, together with her collaborators, she created a piece entitled Are You Sure? Adapted from the myth of Pandora's box as a statement on the socio-political climate in Ireland at the time. And this was against the backdrop of the abortion referendum in Ireland in 2018. They created a powerful piece of political theatre through choreography, play with object, and text. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette. So we'll go over now to Babelsberg Filmuniversity Conrad Wolfe, where Professor Ulrich Wegenast has been honorary professor since 2012. Born in 1966, Professor Ulrich Wegenast is the artistic director of Stuttgart Festival of Animated Film and Raumwelten, platform for scenography, architecture and media since 2005. He studied history of art and arts administration in Stuttgart and Berlin. And in 1987, he was founding member of the Stuttgart Filmwinter Festival for Expanded Media. He has presented more than 100 lectures and workshops in universities and institutions, including Harvard University, University of Toronto, New York University, Nanyang University of Technology, Ars Electronica, and Bangkok Cultural Center. He has worked as a consultant for Documenta, Schirn Kunsthalle Frankfurt, and Munich Film Fest. Ulrich, hi.
Candice.
Thanks for joining us tonight, and thank you so much for being part of the program.
Thanks for including me for this really great project, and really look forward to those the upcoming cooperations and exchanges with the different students, and especially with the different disciplines. As I heard yesterday, is about intersectoral cooperation in the creative arts, and I think this project is also about this. So I think we're on the right path. So I just would like to introduce the two students. As a honorary professor, I have to say I'm not that much involved in teaching like the other professors, but I really appreciate the work by Felicitas Bergström. She is born in Stockholm in 1988, and she graduated with a BA in 2019 at Filmuniversity, and now continues with a MFA, Master of Fine Arts at Filmuniversity. She also had a education in film direction at Film Arc in Berlin, and her work is much more installation based than most of the animation filmmakers I know. So she is in between fine arts, installation art and animation, and her latest work, Cycle of Violence, has been nominated for European Media Art Festival in Osnabrück or Sehnsüchte Film Festival in Berlin. There are other short films, which are often puppet animated films, has been shown at Chicago International Children's Film Festival, in Melbourne, Indie Lisboa, Anifilm in Trebon, Tabor Film Festival, Animal Fest in Bucharest, or Interfilm Berlin. So I think she fits perfect to this project, because she's working in a very interdisciplinary way, working together, cooperating with musicians, and especially she's exploring the space through her animated films, and is deep digging into psychological questions. So I'm really looking forward how she will cooperate and get involved in the project. The other student I choose is Maria Taishara. She is from Portugal, and she had an education in Porto for visual communication or communication design, a BA, and she was student at Babelsberg from 2014 until 2019, did her BA in animation, and also won the graduation prize for the best bachelor film. Her latest film, Inside Me, is one of the most successful animated films from the last years. This film won the most important award for short film in Germany, the German Short Film Award. She got the Lola for best animation, and this film has been shown all over the world and won a lot of awards, and had TV screenings with Arte in Circuit, Kurzschluss, and in Portugal at RTP2. So she's quite involved in animation, and her style is very handmade, so non-digital, but in a way she's quite innovative. Even her style seems to be more traditional. I really appreciate her style and the way she's animating. Thanks.
Thank you, Ulrich. So now over to Limerick, where Jürgen Simpson is the director of the Digital Media and Arts Research Centre in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Limerick. The department was one of the first in Ireland to offer undergraduate and postgraduate degrees focusing specifically on the integration of technology, computing and the arts, and today it presents courses in music, media and performance technology, art and technology, and digital media design. Jürgen's own artistic practice is rooted in music, though he works across many disciplines, including dance and the visual arts. He has created works for opera, film scores, sound installations, and for contemporary dance. His work has been supported by RTE, the Arts Council of Ireland, Culture Ireland, the British Council, the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, and the Canada Council for Arts. He is the co-curator of Light Moves, an interdisciplinary festival located in Limerick, which was founded in 2013. The festival bridges dance, media arts, and screen-based practices. Jürgen, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for, of course, joining the program. Would you like to say a few words about your students?
Sure. I mean, I'll reiterate what Ulrich has said as well. We are in a fortunate position in some ways to be embarking on this project, given that it is in fact an exploration of connectivity using the very tools that we've unfortunately had to use. And so there's an interesting dynamic here. We probably all hate working like this, working remotely, and yet actually thematically it's quite poignant. And I think a lot of the students, certainly from my group, are students who I think have probably engaged in these questions because actually the three students in question all come from the course you've just mentioned, which is the MA in Art and Technology. So the interest technology course, Marcus Craig from 4 years ago, Roshin Rosenberg from 3 years ago, and Michal Keating from the year before this one. And although they are all artists who have, I think, a strong relationship with technology, with digital arts, as you might well imagine, I think what actually marks them out is that there are artists who are incredibly sensitive to the tactile arts. They're photographers. They're working with physical objects, sculptural objects. And they're working with environments and with the tangible around them. So I think that's something which I felt that each of those students actually has quite a strong relationship. I'll start with the first student from our first year of the Art and Technology course, Marcus Craig. Marcus Craig, I mean, I remember each of these students very, very well. So without even maybe, I could read his biog, but I'll tell you a bit about Marcus. Marcus has a background in, I would say, photography would have been one of his main areas. He has a BA in design, BFA in photography, and he also works practically within art technologies professionally now. And then he did his MA and MSc with us and graduated in 2018. He's won numerous awards for his photography, and when he presented last week, it was quite evident that he had these really striking images that he was bringing to the table. But within his practical sculptural work that he's done with us, what always struck me about his work was just his ability to find solutions to really interesting concepts and problems in his work. And one of the works that he presented during his time with us was a work, for example, to do with memory, and to try to recreate the relationship between how our neurological systems work, and to translate that into into actually physical and electronic and digital media. So he actually recreated a form of memory that involved both digital means and also analog recorded sound and tape, and put all those things through processes which were then exhibited in a multi-screen context. Really, really beautiful and really striking work. And very memorable, and a lot of his work has that kind of dynamic between very physical engagements with analog technologies, yet working with a really keen eye and a sensitivity to the image. So that's Marcus Craig. Roshin Berg, I probably know the longest because Roshin actually studied on her undergraduate with us. She did the BSc in Music, Media and Performance Technology, and then subsequently she did the MA in Art and Technology. Roshin Berg's work is in an exceptionally tangible way. Her work invariably explores in different ways the nature of how screens host images. And some of the work that she's done over the years is looking at actually sort of taking apart physically the screen and presenting the screen and throwing electricity through the screen to use these flat panel screens as canvases onto which she projects other images. And she uses lots of mirrors and she uses lots of projection mapping, but in ways that I think are incredibly inventive and really engaging. And one of the themes that continuously comes through in her work is using the image to present challenges to how we perceive time. And so she uses these multiple delays in which one is never quite sure whether one is actually visiting the present through the projected image or whether there is in fact a game being played and you're looking at something which happened some moments or many moments ago. I'll add that Roshin has also worked quite a lot in collaborative contexts. She works a lot with the Irish World Academy here at the University of Limerick and works there supporting artists in their technical work. And most recently, she has joined one of the initiatives that a recent initiative that the festival that you just mentioned has been engaged in, which is Open Futures. She was one of 110 artists, one of 110 submissions we received for this new project investigating choreography and technology and computing. That starts next month, and we chose 8 groups of artists. We chose 8 artists to participate in that, and she's now doing that as well. So she'll be doing that concurrently. So that's Roshin Berg, and then finally Micheál Keating. Micheál being sort of the Irish pronunciation of the word Michael. So if you see Michael, I think it's pronounced Micheál, which, like Roshin, is a name with 2 faddas, the Irish letter with the little accent on top of it. And Micheál actually has a real diversity to him. He's another person. All of these people are, by the way, from Ireland, and he's also from here, from the west of Ireland, from Limerick. He actually has a background in pop music or rock music. He was signed relatively recently to Virgin Records. And produced an album which I think received numerous awards and was, I think, considered one of the 7 best albums of the year by the Irish Times when it was released. And with that backdrop, he adds another dimension. He's also from a farming background, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, still practices professionally as a farmer, working in the dairy industry. And I'll never forget the film that he made for us, which was this beautiful film that engaged in the history of his own family and the relationship that he now has to a future in something which is culturally vital to his history, to everybody's relationship to the land, but very cognizant of the challenges involved. And so he's also a digital artist, but working in a really fascinating way with multiple images and with memory as well in terms of his work. So those are the 3 Irish artists from Limerick.
Thank you so much, Jürgen. And finally, we're going to go over to composer and performer Jennifer Walsh, who is from Dublin, Ireland, and is currently a professor at the Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst in Stuttgart. Her music has been commissioned, broadcast, and performed all over the world, and she has been the recipient of fellowships and prizes from, among others, the Foundation of Contemporary Arts in New York, the DAAD Berliner Künstlerprogramm, the Internationales Musikinstitut in Darmstadt and Academy Schloss Solitude. She is a member of Estona, Ireland, and the Akademie der Kunst here in Berlin. Jennifer, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for participating in the program. It's great to have you.
Thanks very much. My thanks go to you hugely for organizing this, Candice, and for everybody who's put in all the work to make it happen. I think it's a really fantastic opportunity for the students. It's such a difficult year to be a young artist right now. You can't go to exhibitions easily, you can't travel, you can't get your work out there, and so it's really wonderful that the participants really have an opportunity to meet new people. It seems so difficult to actually meet new people and collaborate with them under these circumstances. So this is really wonderful. I have been at the university in Stuttgart for the last 3 years. I was hired there to be a professor of experimental performance as part of a new initiative that the Hochschule had, which was to make a new Landeszentrum called Campus Gegenwart. The different institutions in Baden-Württemberg could apply for funding and bids to host these new Landeszentrum, and the Hochschule in Stuttgart received the winning bid to create this Center for the Contemporary, Campus Gegenwart. So I started there 3 years ago. It's a very unusual sort of initiative for Musikhochschule in that the other hire that they made at the same time as me was a professor of contemporary aesthetics, which was a position that didn't exist at the Hochschule prior to this. So I sort of work across all the different departments. I teach students from every single department, and I also teach students from the art school and the design academy in Stuttgart. So it's a quite wide-ranging group of students. So we just started in October our brand new master's program, which is in the theory and practice of experimental performance. So the 2 participants from Stuttgart are coming towards the end of their first year in this program, this master's program, under pretty challenging circumstances, a brand new master's program that's happening during a pandemic when nobody can be in the same room together. So they've really been fantastic, and they've kept their morale up, which has been challenging at times with all of the lockdowns. The 2 students are, the first one is Elisabeth Kaiser. Elisabeth is a German singer and composer. She's very interested in interspecies communication. So she's very interested in the work of Donna Haraway and Bruno Latour and people like that. She's done a lot of performances with non-human beings, so in botanical gardens or in forests and things like that. And at the moment, she's doing a lot of performances working with precious metals that she's ingesting into her body or singing against and things like this. So she has sort of been moving through the pandemic, developing these quite intense relationship with these objects that she can actually interact with. So I know she is very excited to see what's possible, especially considering that there's people in Ireland that she can interact with who have experience in theatre and things like that. The other student is Wyatt Wakefield. Wyatt is American. He studied as a composer in Graz with Klaus Lang and then came across to Stuttgart. Wyatt, already when he was a composition student, was starting to do things like projection mapping, so writing pieces for organ but with video projection mapped onto the body of the organ. And since he has arrived in Stuttgart, he has sort of gone from 0 to 100 where film is concerned, and sort of really just dived deep into that world. And he's very interested in film, so he's been really enjoying watching a lot of German film, reading Alexander Kluge and people like that, and diving deep into that world. And I sort of feel like my students, I'm glad because they've already gotten used to an Irish professor speaking very, very quickly and pronouncing words in slightly strange ways. So they've been making good headway with names like Mihal and Roshin and Sinead. So I feel confident that they'll do well. They're both very excited to be in the program. It's been a real challenge for them starting a new master's during a pandemic. Wyatt in particular moved from America, to Stuttgart to start the program. Elizabeth is based just outside of Stuttgart, and she's been based there for a long time. So it was a little less of an upheaval for her. So I'm really thrilled that they can get to know new artists. They found the presentations last week really inspiring, and today we were discussing whether it would be possible at some point for them to come over to Ireland, and get to meet some of the people in person and go around Cork or Limerick and sort of see the landscape and things like that.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Yeah, the students are just exceptional artists. The first meeting with them last week was so exciting to see so much range and diversity and just really interesting ideas, and it's really exciting to imagine that these great young artists are going to pair together to create new works collaboratively. So yeah, it's really wonderful. You've all done already such a great job in choosing and selecting really interesting artists to take part. And we're all, the embassy are so grateful to have you guys involved, and you've been so enthusiastic and taking great care with the project already. We have a number of months to go, so the students will get together in their pairs soon. We hope that we will identify the working teams in the next sort of week or two, and they will be working remotely, obviously, through whatever cloud means that they feel is going to best serve them. Obviously, everything with this program needs to be quite adaptable and agile, because there's so many different art forms, because we're in this situation of working remotely on a brand new initiative. So it's all about kind of just keeping communications open and figuring out what way it will work best. So the students will work together over the coming months, and each month they will get together with one of the lecturers for a very long workshop to kind of touch base with where the projects are at, and to communicate with each other. I think these workshops will be really, really useful. I'm looking forward to being a fly on the wall as well, because you guys have such great insight and great ideas as well. So throughout the summer, the students will meet in these workshops for 5 workshops, and then in November, the art pieces will be exhibited in Raumwelten. Perhaps Ulrich might say a little bit about that in a minute. So during this process of designing the program, which the embassy have been involved with for the past sort of roughly 6 months, we've come up with some challenges or just sort of like problems to solve of how the program can work, how we can fit the universities, the third level education structures between Germany and Ireland, how of course this will operate during a pandemic. When the concept was initially created, the idea was that this was actually designed for a pandemic like that. This will be exhibited totally online. As things are progressing and it looks like we might be able to do this in real life, we're going to just expand the program as we can possibly. So yeah, one of the challenges, of course, has been this sort of needing to be agile with regards to planning the exhibition. We don't know if we'll be able to travel and what form of installation might be possible. Of course, Jürgen mentioned that some of his students do work with big installations, so how can we adapt these different art forms to be agile? So Ulrich, would you mind saying a few words on this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that will be a challenge, I would say, in regard to realization if it comes to a real kind of exhibition. But I think the format is quite flexible, and I think that's also one aspect of the whole project, that the students and the participants start to develop projects together which fit in different formats, and what we in German would say Aggregatzustände, or to quote Joseph Beuys. So that will be a kind of a process, I would say. But finally, I really would like to help and to support that the projects will be exhibited at a Raumwelten festival or conference. You see, this is one of our pavilions, which we have realized in the context of Raumwelten, which is a conference on architecture, kind of spatial design, exhibition design, scenography, and media. So a mixture between media arts, virtual reality projects, models, architecture, performing arts. So it's a very hybrid format with very different artists and people also coming from business side, looking for new formats and innovative ideas. And we plan to realize the projects and to exhibit the projects in the former stable of Karlskaserne, which is also an institution for dance. So therefore, from our side, we also try to raise additional funds to bring all the students and graduates to Ludwigsburg in November, and also give them a chance to participate in different workshops, so that there will be another positive side effect. So we will see how the projects develop, what kind of format the projects will have, and then we will try from our organization to realize the different works and see how we can exhibit them, and especially bring them to a wider audience, a mixture between professionals and people from the region of Stuttgart. So it will be an interesting process. If it at the end will be virtual or taking place in real, that's nobody knows. If there are coming up more lockdowns, then we will decide how we proceed. But my aim is really to bring all the participants to Ludwigsburg, that there will be a meeting in person. I think that's quite important. As more we go virtual and as more we are in digital worlds, the more important is the bodily exchange, the real exchange. So that will be our aim. And you see in the background this former stable. So we see how we can display the projects there. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. I mean, it's going to be wonderful when we can all, finally have in real life exhibitions. And I mean, fingers crossed, something will be possible soon enough. Jennifer, I was wondering if you could say a few words on the students working remotely together. You obviously have a lot of experience on working on art pieces, on your own art pieces remotely. So I mean, it must be, it's obviously very different to be in a room with somebody and have this sort of like shared experience in a room together that you work on. But there are advantages obviously to working remotely, and it's possible.
I mean, I think it's definitely possible. And I think as the ambassador was saying at the beginning, these sort of events, these would have involved people flying in or getting the train up and accommodation. And I definitely do think there's things that we're not going to go back to the way they were before. And one of the things that is, I think, fantastic is we've broken the seal, so to speak, on the idea of people giving talks to students via Zoom, because it's standard practice. Most universities, say on a Wednesday evening, have an invited speaker to come and talk about their subject. And that, of course, that would always be preferable in person, because then you can all go for a meal and there's a lot of conversations that happen. But I think people are very used to the idea that a speaker might give a talk via Zoom, you know, and that there'll be a discussion on Zoom. And I think we won't go back to that. But I think in terms of collaborating online, of course, it's a lot easier if you know the person, because you already have like a workflow and you understand how each other work. What we've been doing with my students is trying to get them to collaborate inside of digital spaces that are not Zoom. So I know, Ulrich, you've been doing lots of stuff with Mozilla Hubs and things like that. We've even been doing things with having students like occupy the comments of a YouTube video and do like a sort of a strange text performance inside the comments of a YouTube video, or making internet native work. So we've been trying to use the pandemic as a way to sort of examine these ways of working that are not just a Zoom panel, but somewhere beyond. I would say, like, one thing that could be great, and I'm sure we will talk about this as things unfold, would just be even the different platforms and the different, so for example, like using Clean Feed or something like that gives you much better quality audio than you would get with Zoom. My students have tested the absolute outer limits of what you can do with Zoom. And the problem is, you know, with feedback, and it mutes people selectively and it prioritizes the voice in the compression algorithm. So if somebody's playing an instrument and then somebody just talks to their roommate, that will be amplified and the instrument will be suppressed automatically by the Zoom algorithm. So I think we're ready for the new platforms and to see what's possible on those too. So I'm sure we'll be discussing those as the months go on, ways to make it even easier to collaborate from a logistical standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, and I think it's invaluable to have your experience and the rest of the professors' experience in these things. You're really working at sort of the cutting edge of these technologies now. So I think we're like everyone involved is going to learn and take things from that. It's really, really exciting. So another aspect which is quite interesting about the program is the wide variety and range of disciplines. Obviously, it took quite a bit of curation on the embassy side to get the various different the right kind of partners in the lecturers, and I think I'm extremely happy with the sort of like variety we have between all of yourselves, and then of course how that's extended to your students. Jürgen, I was wondering if you could say a few words on this sort of like the opportunities and the challenges that we might face with pairing the different disciplines.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the first things to say is that I think there is a significance here from the perspective of the fact that we are looking at a collaboration between two countries with two different languages, both in Europe, at a time when that conversation is all the more important given where we are with the evolving nature of Europe itself. And so one of the things that strikes me as being particularly important from an Irish perspective, probably more so in fact than a German perspective, is in fact this, I guess the relationship of ideas, and the accessibility to ideas that are distinctly from the German end of things, that don't reach into the Anglophone world easily. What is really striking is, for example, in terms of that conversation, and I think why this project is quite vital, not only now, but going forward, and works like it, is in fact that question of conversation and recognizing that actually, for example, many of the ideas, the literature that forms the questions of aesthetics, the questions of the social questions, the ideas that are very clear to many German people. Many of those books have never been translated into English. And as we all know, we have a tendency in the Anglophone world not to as easily embrace other languages, because of course in Ireland and in England and in America we all speak English, and sure everybody else can learn our language because we won't bother to learn theirs. But it is very clear when you look at this question of translation, what a dearth of translated important books from across Europe and France and Poland as well have never found their way into English. And so I'm really interested in seeing if there's a translation there as well, a translation of ideas that don't manifest as often within the sphere of the Anglophone world here in Ireland. That's very important, I think, in the context of where we are at in Europe right now, and that's why I'm really welcoming this project for that reason. But then the other question, of course, is the translation of ideas between disciplines, which Candice, you're talking, I think, directly to. You know, this is one of the first things you realize once you start working in an interdisciplinary fashion, is that actually many of the ideas and the languages and the words used to describe features in one's practice, in one's art form, that they are often either alien or mean something totally different in another art form. You find that, for example, in the translation between dance and music, where the word gesture can mean something very neutral, perhaps in a music context, but can have a very weighted baggage in the dance sphere. So when we have these artists, and they really are a diverse group, as you said, some of them are working very much in sort of physical handmade animation. Others are working very much in digital forms. Some are working in sound. Some are working in the visual arts. There is going to be another kind of translation, which is the translation between how do they communicate. And even if they were in the same room with one another, they would still have this challenge. So there's going to be a really interesting further challenge about how do these you know, I think very talented group of people, how do they manage that? How do they manage the question of the conversation that needs to occur, and how does the question of language and the question of ideas find a stability between these distinct practices? So that's going to be fascinating to watch as well, particularly now that, as Jenny has just talked about at great length, is particularly in the contexts where we are reliant almost completely on this notion of the network. And the network has taken on completely new meanings for people who never would have thought about the network before, and now need to really engage much more consciously with the artifacts of the network and the nature of the network as a conduit that in itself has also its own baggage. So there's lots of interesting layers, I think, in this project that you know, ultimately come down to recognizing these, you know, nuances of conversation. So that's, I think, going to be fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, so the students are going to work within the theme of Beckettesque, that is not adapting Beckett's work, but inspired in some way by Beckett's work. As the ambassador said, Samuel Beckett is this great exemplary you know, figure of the connections between Ireland and Germany. He did a lot of work in Germany, and specifically in Stuttgart. So I think that's really interesting. And I think it also gives the students quite a lot of room. It's sort of an anchor for them to work from, but also, you know, it's very interpretable. So it'll be interesting to see. Bernadette, would you mind saying a few words about the theme, or just about working with a theme?
So Beckett is, I guess he's such a significant figure for the Irish. He's all pervasive in our consciousness. Even his image, you know, the images of Beckett are, you know, they're kind of etched on our consciousness. And, you know, I was thinking just there as Jürgen was talking about language barriers and, you know, the dominance of English. Beckett was a polyglot. As we know, he wrote in French, but he also wrote in German. I mean, he went to Germany in, what was it, 1936, 1937, and he read widely and met with German artists, and you know, drenched himself in the culture of Germany. And he was a polyglot. He was a European, and he was also an interdisciplinary artist. He told a lighting designer in this wonderful volume here, Remembering Beckett, Remembering, in interview, that if he hadn't been able to write, he would have been a composer, and if he couldn't have composed, he would have done nothing. And you know, if we think of the late plays of Beckett, like Footfalls and Not I and Rockabye, you know, he was an installation artist as well. He thought visually, he composed music with words. So I think he's an incredibly inspiring artist for interdisciplinary collaborators, you know, cross-pollinating between disciplines. And what does Beckettesque mean? What does he stand for? I mean, Beckett was a contemporary of Camus, who wrote The Myth of Sisyphus, about the Greek figure Sisyphus, who had the Sisyphean task of rolling his boulder up the side of a hill, only for it to roll down again and have to do the same thing again. Like Prometheus, whose liver is attacked and it grows back, and the same thing starts all over again. You know, the tedium of life, the tedium of repetitious labor, but in the face of that, you must continue. I will go on. So he wrote in his novel, the Unnameable in 1953, you must go on, I can't go on, I'll go on. And of course, the famous kind of quote from Wordsworth Hoe in 1983, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. So, you know, quotes like that are very much kind of in common parlance, and I actually hear them more and more in our contemporary world. And this kind of absurdist, you know, take on life, I think, is very, very contemporary. You know, we've been living through a very, very strange time when I'm sure a lot of us have been questioning, you know, the meaning of all this, and how do we survive under such strange circumstances. Beckett is very, very inspiring in that regard, because, you know, he wrote about, he shone a light on those on the margins of society, the down and outs, the have-nots, to explore questions about humanity, about our human nature, and he brought a very kind gaze and a very humorous gaze, I think, as well. I mean, some people have the idea that Beckett, you know, was a very serious artist, very difficult, and yes, the texts can seem to be inaccessible, but if we read them as music, they become less so. And goodness knows, Beckett knew how to craft text with words to create music. So yeah, I think he's incredibly inspiring in our times at this contemporary moment, and very inspiring for young artists, that you go on, you persist even in the face of adversity, and you bring kindness and humor to questions of exploring our humanity. And words, music, images are incredibly important, and gestures. And yeah, and he was so inspired as well, wasn't he, by artists, the older and more contemporary ones. I know he spent hours and hours in galleries around Germany, Berlin and Hamburg and Munich, standing in front of the old masters and modern masters, drinking in these paintings like Caspar David Friedrich's Two Men Gazing at the Moon, only for, you know, decades later, for these images to emerge in his dramas, as in Waiting for Godot, or Edvard Munch's famous painting The Scream, definitely, you know, emerged from his consciousness in the piece Footfalls, which he wrote for Billy Whitelaw in the 1970s. So being inspired as cross-disciplinary artists by other art forms is so apt as well to this project. And yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity for these young artists to be exposed by different ways of seeing in their collaborators, different ways of approaching, different ways of looking, different vocabularies. Yeah, so I guess there's so much to say about Beckett. How could we ever stop talking about him? But hopefully that's there's some stimuli there to think about.
Definitely. I think, you know, the next next step is to see the works and how they're expressed, and it'll be really interesting at Raumwelten to be discussing where those inspirations came from as well. So I think we'll go quickly to the floor for any questions. If anybody would like to ask a question to myself about the program or to any of the lecturers, feel free to either turn on your video and raise your hand, or if you want to write something into the chat, you're very welcome to, and I'll read it out. I might just, if there is any questions, they can go in the chat quickly. And there's just one more sort of point of discussion that I thought was quite interesting while we were designing the program and working through how, the practical elements of working together and sort of associating these universities in the networks, was the differences between Irish and German third level arts schools. So that was something that, really became apparent, that there's quite a big difference between the sort of structures. Jennifer, would you be able to say a few words on that, as you obviously you teach in Stuttgart and have experience with the Irish university systems?
I certainly think it's very interesting. Prior to starting teaching in Stuttgart, I taught in London here, and so there's quite a sort of difference in the amount of latitude that the professors have to organize the teaching compared to how it would be within the UK system. So, for example, in the UK system, because fees are charged, you can't change the content of a course more than once a year, and it has to go through a committee and be approved and things like that. Whereas the way that things are organized at the Hochschule I teach at, we have a little bit more latitude, which allows us even to respond to what's happening in the news, to current events, to sort of change the structures of the classes in the way that we think will work the best. I think with Zoom, I understand after a year on Zoom that my students' attention starts to drift after about 45 minutes. It's difficult. And at that point, it's good to take a break, get in a breakout room, give them some exercises they can do even outside their apartment. So being able to actually even rearrange the structure of my teaching in response to the pandemic and the way the lockdowns have occurred has made my life a lot easier, because I've been able to sort of respond to the actual teaching medium, the teaching platform, and tailor it to fit that. So I've appreciated that very much. But certainly I think all university systems feature incredibly talented young artists who are motivated and face their own sort of generational challenges that we have to try and provide whatever support we possibly can for, and that's the same in any country that I've ever taught in.
Thank you. Does anybody else of the professors want to contribute to that, or anything else you'd like to say tonight before we wrap up? Okay, so there's no more questions. We clearly really described and illustrated the program well enough that there's no questions. Thank you all again so much. I'm extremely excited about what's going to come out of this program. The students, I mean, we call them students. Some of them are current students, some of them are alumni. They're all young artists. They're absolutely exceptional. They're really exciting artists, and it's such an honor to have them and to have you professors, who are a lot of you exceptional artists as well in your own right, and curators as well, festival curators, and it's really it's such an honor to have you involved in this program. I'm very grateful. The embassy is very grateful for your contribution and your enthusiasm. Excuse me. So we'll call it a night then for the launch. Yeah, it's really exciting. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And oh, there's one message. Thank you, Tiziana. It's not a question. So delighted to see the collaboration. I was in University Potsdam for 8 years and we worked with the HFF. Great to see the Ireland-Germany connection flourish this way. Thank you. Very, very happy to see the connection flourish as well. So thank you all so much. I hope you can follow the progress of the program and especially at the exhibition in Raumwelten Festival later this year. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the students. Thank you to the lecturers. Thank you, Milena, who is hosting the Zoom tonight. And thank you, Ambassador, for your words. Thank you all.